Hello and welcome to this Affinity Photo tutorial where I'll be looking at the auto editing options that you have in Affinity Photo and the history panel. Now this is like a beginner's guide, and it's part 14 of my little series of beginner's guides. So jumping straight in, the auto editing options I want to talk about are these four icons up here just underneath the arrange and filter menus. The first one being auto levels, then you have auto contrast, auto colors and auto white balance. And the history tab is found down here in the bottom right with the navigator and transform, and history is this tab here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag this out to make it easier to sort of see what is going on here. Let me put it about there. So starting with the auto editing, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make three copies of this to give me 4 images. So I'm just going to right click this layer here and click copy, and then come up to file, new from clipboard, and I'm going to do this 3 times so I have 4 versions of the same image, which it just happens to be a photo I took of where I live. So I'm just going to click on the first one, which is auto levels. Now these different editing options here are sort of a serif's guess or their idea of what should be done to the image that is in Affinity Photo. On the whole, I've pretty much find I don't particularly like them, but if you're quite new to editing, it might be a good place to start. But you know, I fully can't see why, if you buy an image editor, you just sort of go for the auto options when you have so much more power in your editing by learning a bit more about the program. But obviously if you're a beginner, you just want to sort of learn slowly. So I'm going to use this auto levels, and sometimes it will have no effect or no visible effect, and other times it will have a dramatic effect. Depends on your image, obviously. So I click on this, as you can see, this is sort of it's made the sky much brighter. The seats have gone a bit darker, I think, but that's okay, I suppose. And as you can see in this history panel, it has put in here auto levels. Let me come to this next picture, and I'm going to try the next one, and then you can see, because you've changed image, the history panel has now gone blank. So we'll come to the next one and we'll try auto contrast. Again, it's done a very similar effect to what the auto levels did. The sky's a bit brighter, image is a bit brighter, and the seats are a bit darker, and history has auto contrast in it. And the next one would be auto colors. Now I'm expecting the grass at the very least to become much greener, and maybe the sky a bit bluer. Let me just click on that. Yeah, you can see the colours have been sort of boosted and given a bit more oomph, and we have auto colours in the history tab. And the last one, auto white balance. This will either make it cooler or lighter, or if it thinks the image is okay white balance wise, it probably have no effect, and I can see no noticeable effect there. So I'm just going to delete these 3 copy images that I made and just stick with this start image here. And just because you've used one of these auto editing options doesn't mean you can't use some of the others. If I now try the auto, because this was auto levels that I had on this one, I'll try auto colors, see if we can boost those colors a bit. Now, it doesn't seem to have a vast amount of effect, because I'm guessing the auto levels has probably sorted out some of the problems that were there, and so there's not much colour in the way of colours to boost. And we'll just have one more go with the contrast. Again, now it's not having much effect because the auto levels has probably done most of the heavy lifting. So it's not to say you can't use one or more of these options to add to your editing process, and if you're happy with the end result, doesn't matter whether you've done it with the auto options or whether you've done it more manually with layers and what have you. As long as you're happy with the end result, that is all that matters. So that's really all I can really say about the auto editing options. So now we're going to go on to the history, and like we said, we've got this history panel here, and all it does is list all the options that you do while you are editing. So if, for example, I wanted to now edit it a bit further, and I sort of added a levels adjustment, even though it has been auto edited with levels, I may want to push this a bit further and make that grass a bit greener maybe, or darker. We'll leave that there, but as you can see, that has now been added to the history. Now, let's say for example I wanted to sort of possibly turn this black and white, and I use the adjustment of black and white, and I make some adjustments. Let's just have a little tinker with this here. I'm not going to be too precise, I'm just doing it so it can be seen. So you've made your black and white adjustment, and you think, hang on, I'm not so sure I like that so much, but you're not 100% certain, but you want to try something else. So you can use your history tab and click back on the option before you added that particular adjustment, in this case black and white. So if I click back on there, it'll go back to where it was before I added that adjustment, and I could add a different adjustment. Let's say for example split toning. We'll try split toning, and all the split toning does is you can add a colour to the highlights or shadows. So let's say we make the highlights a blue colour, and we bump up the saturation of the highlights, and we'll leave the shadows in the red area, and I'll push this up so there's a lot more red coming, especially in the grass around here, and the seats have gone a bit sort of more red in them. So that is the split toning option, and I will shut that. But as you can see, so those two adjustments have now been added on top of, or instead of, the black and white adjustments. But at the point before I added that, there's now been added this logo, which is like a dot at the top and two dots at the bottom. It's like a split, and if you click on that option, it will switch you back and forth between the two different editings, and you can sort of reverse the history and see which way you wanted to go, if you like that one or that one. So that is a way to sort of go backwards in history of your editing and look at a different way of editing it and see which way you preferred, just by clicking on this little icon that has been added. Now when you let's say you sort of you've looked up and you see the time is midnight and you want to go to bed, but you haven't finished editing. So if you just save this by the file save as, it will save in the Affinity Photo format, which is AF Photo if I remember correctly, and it will save whichever version you have currently here, whether it's the black and white version or the split tone version, and it will save that. It will not save the various steps that you have made, be they in the layers panel or in the history here. And just to prove that, I'm going to save this, and where are we saving this one? Let's just do it there, and I'll call this A save. So that is just saved as you would sort of normally save it. But you can also, in the file menu, if you come a bit further down here, you've got save history with document, and if you click on that, it will ask you to enable save history with document. You say yes, and if I now come down, it's got a tick next to save history with document, and if I use save as, but this time call it AH for A with history, save as, so that's now saved. And if I now close that, if I then go to open this, we should have here somewhere, there we go, A photo, and then I'll open up AH as well. So as you can see, A, which is just using save as, it has obviously saved the layers and what have you as I made them, but the history is blank, so I can't go back and check on whether I may have wanted to go with the black and white version. It has just left me with the version that I had ended with, which was the split tone version, but the one which I saved with the history has saved the history as well, and I still got this option. If I still haven't made up my mind which way I want to go, the history is still there and available, and it remembers it. Now the only problem with this is if I go to there again, and we'll look at how much in size. The without the history is 48.1 megabytes, and with the history is 118 megabytes. So saving with the history makes the file bigger, but if you do for some reason need to stop editing, you can save it with the history, come back to it, do a bit more editing at a later date, and then save it without the history if need be. So that's basically it, to look at how you can use the auto options to do a bit of editing, and how you can use the history tab and sort of help protect the steps that you have made if you haven't quite finished making a decision, or B, finished editing in total. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.